Hello, this is Randy Wooden. This is from the Wooden Desk. We're in a series entitled Emotional Leadership. Emotional Leadership. This is episode 2, and I hope you're tuning in. And it's a great tool to use with yourself, your spouse, or even a situation with your team of asking some questions and assessing where you're at in your emotional health, so to speak, with your team or yourself. Sometimes you need to bring somebody who's close enough who can be honest with you about areas you may become very reactive in your emotions rather than proactive, or how you are responding and making decisions as leaders. So many times I have been in times where it seemed there's seasons very healthy and making good decisions, emotions are full of joy, and it seems like there's a clarity and a focus. And then there's been other times where a lot of unforeseen difficulties come, and sometimes you're dealing with a lot of stress, and it begins to bring out emotions that are not always that positive. And it's in those seasons many a times that we're able to identify areas and emotions that are not quite healthy, so that we can say, hey, wait, I've got to take and I've got to mark that area. I've got to take control of that area, or I will end up in a place that is not healthy, and I will begin to respond in ways that could possibly hurt my credibility as a leader, or in essence, hurt the organization's ability to move forward. And I'm telling you, leading emotionally all the time is a dangerous place to be, and it can truly sabotage your leadership and your ability to go, what I call, go for the long haul and to stay long term in a place. And without a doubt, I believe this is important. We kind of left off in the area of the fact is the root definition of emotion is internal motion. You take the E off of emotions, you get motion. You get this internal motion. What's stirring inside of each of us? There is a great number of feelings moving right now. No doubt, maybe some of you right now, some things that are just, there's a lot of anxiety, maybe there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of things moving inside you. You know they're not healthy, but you can't help it because of the circumstances that you find yourself in. So what do? Well, we're going to talk about that probably in another episode, but I think today I really want to get a greater clarity on this thing of what some of the emotions that lead us individually, in our families, and especially in our organizations. But these many emotions that are moving inside of us and move us in what I call certain directions, and are leading us to make decisions that shape our lives. And every one of us know what it is to make decisions that are not good decisions. And without a doubt, we have to sometimes go backwards in order to go forwards, to eradicate or to go back and fix something that we broke as a result of how we reacted in a relationship, or even in making a decision that was not a sound financial decision because we've done something in emotions. Sometimes it almost seems that we are puppets on a string, that are basically our emotions are being pulled haphazardly by somebody or by our emotions in one direction and then in another direction, and we become reactive in whatever we're feeling, so to speak. What I realize is we need to harness our emotion, get control of them, so that they are able to move in a direction that we want them to go, in the direction that God would have them to grow. You know, God uses our emotions. You know, we are stirred to tears sometimes because God touches us, or we sense something that brings excitement. Now, don't mistake that that's not a sign of being unhealthy. I mean, that's just a sign of being human. But I'm finding that is needful. You know, as I said, coming from a spiritual, charismatic background, is, you know, I love to be excited. I love to, we would say, shout to the Lord or dance before the Lord. And many of them are outward manifestations of how we demonstrate excitement and rejoicing. And I don't have anything at all Don't mistake what I'm talking about when I talk about emotions, but I'm talking about emotions that are negative emotions and emotions many a times that are leading us where we don't want to go or should not go. See, I can tell you that if we don't control what is in us, we will end up trying to control those around us. Now, I've had people in leadership scope who I know that were good people, but because of their emotions and some of their negative emotions, they were always trying to control the outcome and control people around them with their emotions. I know pastors that unfortunately lead with negative emotions of manipulation and intimidation and domination. I've had people who have come and basically sat in my office who have been hurt by a ministry or hurt by a pastor. And of course, many a times I've apologized on the behalf of clergy or someone who had hurt them in leadership and said, I'm so sorry that this happened. But what I realize is many a times the reason that does happen is because people, in some leaders, and I would say that many of times this area of negative emotions comes out of a place of powerlessness. When leaders begin to feel powerless, they begin to try to control, and many a times they many a times lose control, and as a result of losing control, people get hurt. And the result is chaos. People sabotaging their careers, ruining relationships, and splitting families. And I've seen it. I've seen it in organizations. I've even seen it in church. Sadly enough, sometimes church people are some of the most emotional people. And unfortunately, it's not always healthy. And I'm not just throwing off on quote unquote members or people in the church and the congregations. I would talk even about leaders and pastors who have gotten churches in trouble because they were leading by emotions rather than by the Spirit. We have to be very, very careful to know the difference and to have clarity about that. That's why I believe one of the areas of when we talk about the gifts of the Spirit and areas that we need to have today, I would say we need to have a discernment today and pray for a discernment of wisdom, a discernment of all the different emotions that are going and that are in the atmosphere today, that we have got to have healthy leadership and emotional leadership that is healthy, that has spiritual emotions, that not only discern by the Spirit, but discern the personnel around them and the people around them, saying, hey, wait a minute, this is not God, this is just emotion, and how many times have we, the old song, talk about the Sunday that the squirrel went to church. And the squirrel got loose in church and some people got excited and revival struck out. Well, was that the Spirit of God? It was a squirrel. And, I don't mean that bad, but what I mean is that we can be, again, fooled by emotions and be left feeling like fools. And that's not what God wants. That's not what I want for you as a leader. And I know there's been times I've sabotaged myself and allowed others to sabotage me because of their emotions or their emotional outburst. And I think this is very important for us to realize. That's why I believe that the outcome of our lives is not determined by the chances we get, but by the choices we make. What choices are we making? And we can't literally, if we are what I call being impulsive, so to speak, in all that we're doing, we're always going to be in trouble. See, I have a slogan, and I've used it over the years, that says that don't do what feels good, do what produces good. Do what produces good, don't do what feels good. Always, I felt like I was supposed to do that. Well, who told you that you felt like that? And I've met people, everything's God. Well, God told me this and God told me that. And sometimes we'll say, no, God didn't tell you that. Your feelings told you that. And sometimes we get very mistaken, and that's why we need to even tune in that thing of discernment and knowing the voices and knowing what's going on internally in our own lives. Let's talk about the momentum of emotion. The momentum of motion. We've all been here. So let me just take you through this a second. January. comes along after feeling guilty about all the desserts we ate during the holiday season. And all of a sudden we're watching TV and we see the hip and thigh sculpture instrument, and all of a sudden we think, man, I got to have that. So we get on the 800 number, give them our credit card number, and it's shipped. And 4 weeks later, we get it in the mail. And basically it goes into the garage conveniently on a shelf. Why? It's because the emotion that we bought that in was not the emotion we were at the end of January. Or next, we inspire to eat better. So, we buy the juicer from the juice man. Guilty, I did that one. We got it. It was pretty cool. Put the vegetables in it, juices it out. Only problem is it takes you 45 minutes to get it ready and 30 minutes to clean the contraption. Guess what? It ended up in the pantry and it's there today. Oh, every now and then we might get it out for something, but you get what I'm saying. Or later on, we're listening to a TV commercial on the classics, and we're listening to the music, and we're kind of lonely and depressed, and we think, man, that'd be cool to have. So we buy the 20 CDs or the download, and next thing we get it in a few weeks, and we're not in the mood to listen to the music. Well, these are just a few of the countless ways that our emotions drive us to make decisions, even in our spending. In the spending of money, you might say, well, you could spend your money better, or you might even say, well, that's kind of harmless, but let's continue. I mean, many of times people are feeling alone today, and especially with the pandemic and all the other stuff that's going on, the pressure, stress, people just want to escape, looking for escapisms. So they start drinking, they start taking drugs. Oh, many of our states now are legalizing marijuana. So, hey, it's legal. What's the big deal? It'll just help me chill out. Only realizing that chill out feeling becomes an addiction, or ended up on pornography, or ending up in a hookup shop. Only thinking, well, if I, hook up, I'll feel better, But what it really does is it leads you down a path of destruction. Why? It's because you allowed your emotions to begin to take you in a place that God never ordained you to go. Wow. Or maybe you're a parent and you have a toddler. All of a sudden that toddler is getting on your nerves. And after 5 times of telling them, after counting to 10, after doing everything you could to calm down, you blast off and explode. And you start saying things you should not have said to that child, or you become abusive in some way, ultimately hurting the soul of that little child. We have all at times probably lost control in some area. See, your emotions have gotten the best of you, just like they have me at times, but brought out the worst in each of us. But we have to be very, very careful to realize that when that happens, not only the destruction and the consequences that can take place, the loss of credibility, the loss of integrity, not only the loss of our own peace. Life is made up of a series of choices, and no matter how smart, how strong you are, our choices so often are based on how we feel. Why? Again, it's because our emotions run our lives, and too often run them into the ground. Wow. But all this has to change. That's why we're doing this series. I'm talking to some leaders, there's no doubt in my mind, because I felt directed that I needed to do this on the wooden desk and get it out for somebody to listen to, that there are individuals and there are even leaders that are in some really, what we would call big positions, leading many people. But you're leading by your emotions. You're not leading by the Spirit. You're not leading by maturity. You're not leading in the areas like you need to lead. And it's time to take a step back and really look at this. See, part of the secret to leading effectively, I really believe, is for all of us to fall out of love. And that means falling out of love ultimately with our feelings. Without a doubt, love is, I remember when I fell in love with my wife, Kathy, I wanted to be around her all the time. She'd always have this one night when we were dating, says, this is my night. wash my hair, do different things. And I can remember even on that one night, I wanted to be with her. Why? Because there was a sense that the person that I loved, I wanted to be with all of the time. What I realized today is that, and the reason I use that analogy is because the picture many a times of relationship, our relationship to emotions, is that we're very attached. As we have seen, too many people are not only overly attached to negative feelings, but they are stuck, so to speak, to them like glue. And I think this is so true, that we can't split many a times apart from them. Although people sometimes convince themselves that others are the blame for their behavior, we know that that's not really true. I can tell you that making other people responsible for what we choose to do puts the power in their hands to be able to change us, and that's impossible. See, throughout this time together, my prayer is you have to realize that the power to change and the power to get a control of your emotions is in your own hands, and with God's help, you can do that. Let's go back to the beginning of this thing. Where did this thing of falling in love with the wrong thing really happen? And of course, everything's going to go back to Genesis, and it's going to go back to Genesis 3. In the Garden of Eden, we realize that God makes Adam and Eve and creates them. He created them to love one another, to love Him. But after their historic and tragic choice of disobedience, they fell out of love with each other, and they each began a new love affair. What was that love affair? They fell in love with their feelings. They become attached to their own desires, their own fears, their own worries. Ultimately, there was a downward spiral that took place in their lives as well as it took place in mankind. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that you should ignore your true feelings or to take them seriously, so to speak. But I'm saying that you must not allow those decisions to be determined by those emotions. In Genesis 4:7, it said, when Cain was on the verge of falling in love with his emotions of jealousy and rage towards his brother, God told him, sin is crouching at your door, Cain, but you must master it. Cain obviously did not master his emotions and wound up killing and murdering his brother. In our lives, though not as extreme, so to speak, sin is often crouching at our door, lurking and waiting for us to give in to emotions. Can emotions lead us into sin? Absolutely. We can see that in the Word in so many stories of how people were led, by their lust, by their pride, by their arrogance. I could go on and on. But these feelings don't heal us or bless us or make us prosper. Rather, they become destructive. In this way, your feelings and negative feelings want to master you, but God is saying you must master them. We've been attached to our feelings for way too long. We've fallen head over heels in love with the wrong thing, indulging in those, what I call negative feelings, and expressing them for a quick relief of our moods. We've been too attached to the wrong thing for way too long. And so many times the wrong thing will not lead us to doing right things. We don't, and this is where I'm really going to try to end this session because I know my time's up. We need to detach our negative and attach to the positive. We need to detach from the negative and attach to the positive. Mentalities of success can lead us from falling back in love with our feelings and rather Help us to fall again in love with God and with our family and with the things that are so important. I hope this series is helping you and helping you to see how sometimes we respond with certain emotions that are not healthy. In our next session, we're going to be talking about the anatomy of emotions and how they build and some of the things, and then ultimately talk about some areas of coming out of unhealth emotion and living in a emotional atmosphere that is going to be healthy and more prosperous for each of our lives. I pray this has been a blessing to you. Again, I pray that the kingdom of God be enlarged in you and around you. I pray God bless you, keep you, make his face shine upon you, go before you in all that you do. God bless you. Have a great day.